It's 2 o'clock, so I propose we begin. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Business Technology Forum webinar. And maybe a few short words about Business Technology Forum. Business Technology Forum is a non-profit organization that gathers and shares best practices regarding the management of digitalization, business technology management, and IT management. And today we have a very interesting topic on our agenda, and I believe this topic is relevant to a vast amount of organizations in private sector as well as in public sector, and it should be very interesting. At least I'm waiting for the next hour and the discussion that we have here. My name is Pavel Haimi. I'm head of Service Integration and Management Services in Sofigate. And today we have Teemu Tanskanen from OP, Henri Helakari from OP, Timo Ahonen from Sofigate, and Juha Kujala from Sofigate participating in this webinar. And we have 2 parts today to cover. The first one is how OP tied the development and SIAM tied it together and what happens next. And then we will discuss a little bit how you can do this in practice, what kind of lessons learned you can apply in your organizations. I will be host today for the webinar. And if you have any questions, you can ask them anytime during this presentation. All the questions will be answered after the webinar. Okay, but before going into OP's case study, I would like to cover a few backgrounds. And I believe all of you are familiar with the big picture. And we know that development, especially agile development and service integration management practices, they're widely used in organizations, but the history is that the development methods, methodology, and the practices, they have been developed separately from the service integration management practices, and vice versa. Service integration management practices are typically developed separately from the development part. And quite many organizations, they have quite good maturity level already in development as well as in service integration, but the collaboration between those 2 cultures and practices is maybe not on the level where it should be. So the trend is at the moment that all the organizations which have invested in development management as well as service integration management, now they would like to tie those practices together to make sure that there is good end-to-end flow and fast development, but still quite a stable environment. And the actual challenges that have evolved of the history are that if you have agile development separately from service integration, there are of course different cultures and ways working, lack of collaboration and mutual understanding, because there are 2 different cultures that are working still on the same subjects. Typically, there are separate metrics and conflicting targets. I would bring also here too much manual work is in place. Sometimes you need dedicated people even to move data from different tools that are used in agile development and then the service management, service integration part. And of course, the main outcome of this kind of pain point is that there is a poor efficiency in end-to-end optimization and also limited visibility on the end-to-end flow. And today we will cover how organization can align the agile development with service integration and management in a way that it forms one entity and one end-to-end flow. And I'm happy that we have Henri Helakari from OP and Teemu Tanskanen from OP sharing their experience and their lessons learned, how OP did it, and what kind of benefits there are in the moment in OP. So welcome Henri and Teemu, and happy to have you here today with us. Maybe a few words about yourself first.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Teemu Tanskanen. I'm heading to the tribe called Service Integration, Digitalization and Automation. And maybe if you are reflecting a little bit that what the Pavel said, that I'm coming the world which is building to the services and looking to the value stream for the business. So looking that our OP's key functions are working together.
Yeah, I'm Henri Helakari and have been with OP a bit more than 4 years, and like said here, so responsible of engineering and DevOps. So basically modernizing the OP's software development scene and domain. And I consider myself as a agile native, since I've been working with agile methods basically from the day zero, considering my working life.
Thank you, Henri. Thank you, Teemu. And now we could have a discussion regarding your journey. So, what was your starting point in OP when you start the discussion regarding agile development and service integration making together? How could you describe the days back then? If Teemu, if you would describe first, please.
Okay, yeah. So my background in OP goes back a little over 1.5 years. So back when I came to the OP, there was a very strong already agile culture, and like Henri said, that the DevOps development methods are now heavily invested, and we are moving more and more towards this kind of automized deployment and then testing capabilities. And already before my time, there was a clear understanding that when the agile world is heavily relying on Jira and other agile tools, and then service management world is quite much running in top of the service now, there is the certain kind of gap between, and how it's realized in the daily team life was that many times it was the double manual work with the tickets and activities, if we talk about the development of the changes, or then doing the problem management or incident event fixing. And based on this need that first of all we need to have integrated DevOps teams and agile teams to our other support organization, and also that we can eliminate the waste, that there shouldn't be such a manual activities to copying tickets, which is not much producing any value as such. There was like a targeted project that we would be trying to build the solution which could overcome these obstacles.
Thanks. How about Henri, from your perspective? What kind of starting point you had from the agile development point of view?
I think the slide you presented, like the previous one where you listed the typical challenges in this domain, like if we take the agile development and then the SIAM, And I think that was not 100%, but still quite spot on, that I can sort of underline those challenges, and that was sort of our starting point as well. Not completely, but still most of those they're valid. And like from my point of view, it's really important once we're trying to bind the development and operations together, and we're talking about the end-to-end responsibility within one single team. So it's a big change for the teams. So then naturally we as a support organization need to be able to support those teams from both angles. And therefore, like we as a support organization, mine and Teemu's people, so we sort of need to share kind of the same view of our world. So and same objectives. How do we want to drive the development and operations and support the teams in the best way? And I think we've done work there, but there's still work to be done in terms of like all the domains, people, processes, roles, tools. So now we have, for example, done work in all of those domains, but there's still work to be done, and still we need to sort of share more like cross-functionally the objectives and align the understanding that what sort of tools we're going to use in what domains, and do we need to streamline still our processes, or are those fine from the various perspectives? And therefore sort of still taking the ways of working to the next level and understanding the change we're doing in the same way. So that's really crucial to be able to achieve sort of a fluent end-to-end flow from the end user perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Henri. How about the actual this development initiative? As we know, and as you, Henri, said already, it's a change. It's a change if we're working for both teams. It's also a change in the tools and also integrations between the tools. How did you manage this, and what kind of lessons learned you have from this quite big transformation, I would say, that OP's DevOps teams and service integration team have faced? How did it go? Was it big bang implementation, or how did you manage this kind of change that it goes beyond kind of functions? If you, Henri, could describe from your point of view, how do you see it?
I think it was sort of a project we undertook, and there was quite a few people involved, and from my point of view, like all the major stakeholders were involved, which was of course a good thing. And then it was like you asked, was it a big bang? So I think it was not a big bang. So we sort of took, for example, from the process point of view, process by process, and that's then of course a good thing. And then once sort of trying to deploy the new things, whether it's about the tool or process, towards the teams, so that they're able to digest the change, so you're not able to have all at once. So that was of course a good thing. And then I think the main emphasis, what I tried to bring in as well, was in the change management, because that's sort of I think the most crucial part in terms of DevOps, that how we're able to ship small batches and small changes and deploy those frequently into production. So change management was sort of a priority process, at least from my point of view. And there we got some changes done as well, certain things automated, the tools like are in sync in a better way. and things are automated. Of course, not fully. So again, still work to be done, but it's a good start. And then like still, I think one could say that the emphasis was like in the tools point of view, or it was emphasized in a way. So how do we integrate the tools and how the data is flowing between the tools, and that is needed, but still I think when looking further, so we need to consider the processes as well, probably in a bit more fundamental way, that is there something that we need to change in the processes as well, and I mean automating certain phases still when going further, and that is probably we need to think still, but definitely a good start.
Yeah, thank you, Henri. How about you, Teemu? How did you see the project and how it went from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that we had a very good start, and like the Henri mentioned, we managed to get all key stakeholders in the same table, and we had a quite many tribes who were willing to participate this pilot phase in the beginning, which helped us to actually get the feedback about that what kind of features and how the tool and the process should be going, and then as we completed actual the project, then after that we have been continuing the deployment to the teams and training them, and also collecting the feedback about that what would be the next phases and next features what we need there. It's good to remember, of course, that this is like a beginning and kind of first iteration of the solution, if you would say so. And as we did it like an agile way, also this project that we developed one process at the time, actually deployed it as a one process at the time, as different teams has actually different needs, and not every team needs the full stack of the capabilities what we built here. But this actually gives then the flexibility to teams to then familiarize and learn the new ways of working and processes, and then take it in use. But what about then the future? I think that there are a lot of the possibilities. So of course in usability is still thing what we need to improve, and then get the base processes maybe even leaner, but then top of that when we are able to structurize these things, we can start to automate. And I see that there is actually the big new value in future, that we can shift from manual work and actually move from the development teams or DevOps teams time from ticketing to actual value production.
Yeah, thank you. How about the situation now, where you have aligned development and SIAM together? You have already utilized the solution for a few months, and of course, when you initiate the change that is quite big, and the transformation that is quite big in the organization, you expect that the future is better than the status quo. How would you describe the benefits that you have already received, and what kind of benefits there are, and what kind of feedback you have received so far from the development perspective as well as from the SIAM perspective? If you, Teemu, start first.
Yes, so actually the interest of this solution has been high, and I think that we have over 100 teams already utilizing it, and still we have this year several months to be able to deploy more teams and taking more processes in the scope. So it has been surprisingly good. And we have been able to meet our targets as such, to take in the solution use. And feedback also has been that it's helping especially the teams' day-to-day activities as more and more teams have been able to move using Jira and kind of single tool for the team, and not anymore so much in the service now. Even that will be the backbone where the tickets are then flowing. So in that sense, the start has been very strong and very well valued. Of course, there has been coming a lot of the improvement ideas, and let's say that some processes are not as easy to use what we would like to have. Service request process and incident process has been that kind of thing that we need to lean probably those more. And then interesting thing has been that actually in our original scope, it has been coming that many teams are asking to have this solution in the use maybe sooner than we have been planning. So it has been quite nice ride so far. What comes then to the future, I think that in next year we need to start to plan to the next phases for it, and like the Henri Helakari said, that very likely we need to look about the processes, how to lean them, and maybe also that can we expand the new process areas with the automation, of course.
Yeah, thank you. It's very nice to hear that it definitely helps change management when people are asking that we would like to use refined solution, refined practices. So not much of organizational change management to be done. The feedback is like this. How about you, Henri? What kind of feedback have you received so far? Interesting to hear.
Yeah, so like as I said already, probably the feedback as well has been mostly like regarding to change management. So because there we probably got to do the most and the most concrete things so far. So automating, for example, the sort of markings to the production calendar, which are like from the team's point of view, has been manual work, approving those changes and doing various tricks in our tools and probably in several tools. So that has been really a concrete thing and has brought value to the teams. But of course, then teams, once they are seeing that these sort of things are possible, they've been probably waiting that sort of automation for years or for months. So once they see that this is happening, so they're eager to get more. That what is the next thing that you guys are able to bring into the table so that it will ease up our work. And of course, sort of teams like via these sort of things, they are getting more understanding of the whole, like feeling more responsible of the things after the deployment as well. So having a better visibility into the operations, understanding how my change impacted the whole. So that is sort of bringing more the understanding as well. And those have been really good things. And then of course, things probably are then visible in the backlogs as well within the teams. So there are new sort of things, new sort of actions and domains visible in the backlog. So it's not about 100% of developing the new features, sort of not anymore, but there are sort of the end-to-end responsibility of a team is visible in the backlog as well. So of course a good thing, but then at the same time need to say, like Teemu already said, we still need to further improve the processes and get sort of probably not 100% automation is not possible. Why not? But still getting the automation more and sort of empower the teams in the domain of DevOps so that they are able to master the development operations, and it requires understanding the tools and processes and all that. But then what comes to the future, so I see that there's we have really sort of common things to be done and new domains to be tackled together with the SIAM team. So let's say that how do we handle the blue-green deployments? How do we handle A and B testing? How do we sort of understand the error budget thinking? Like all these kind of things are new to us within the OP context. And how do we, for example, reveal our new features just to certain audience and then before rolling it out to all and everybody? So there's quite a lot of things to be piloted, to be tested, to be proved that it's possible in the finance sector as well, and then trying to make those available for everybody and as a everyday life for the development teams.
Yeah, thank you, Henri. Thank you. It's good to hear, and I think you have a very good roadmap already. You know what you should do next, and definitely new domains will bring new benefits to you. And of course, we see a lot of organizations in Nordics and also globally, and you are definitely for a runner now in this sector. You have development and SIAM working perfectly together. Of course, there's needs for continuous improvement already, but it's very good to hear that this huge change has still proceeded quite well in your organization, and then teams are willing to use refined way of working and also refined tool sets. So I would like to thank you for sharing your experiences, and there are a few questions in the chat, and you can still write any kind of question in the chat, and all the questions will be answered after the webinar. But thank you very much, Henri and Teemu, for participating in the webinar and sharing your experiences in OP. And I think this is so interesting topic, and your journey is so unique at the moment, even globally. So that there might be few people that would like to contact you afterwards to know more. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Thanks.
And we will move to webinar's next part. So Juha Kujala and Timo Ahonen will now cover how can you do the alignment in practice and what kind of best practices there are at the moment. So please go ahead, Timo and Juha.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And if this was a mathematical problem, I would say that the answer is 1.5 times infinite, as shown in this picture. So probably a lot of you have seen this DevOps loop, the infinite loop, how it goes from between the development and the operations. But what we bring to this picture is the third loop here, the service aspect. And we want to make that a continuous value stream that is seamless. It's easy to go from developing something, operating something, to also providing it as a service for your customers and managing that as a service across your ecosystem, which might mean that, for example, there's a shared service desk. There's a good question about this support responsibilities of the DevOps teams, and I think it's not likely that the DevOps team wants to be the first line of support. There's usually a service desk. There's usually a common service portal, and then only when it's really something on the responsibility of the DevOps team, then that's coming to their backlog, and of course they need to have a appropriate time for that as well. But this is the idea that the DevOps team produces a service, and whatever feedback comes from the users of that service also is tightly coming back to the DevOps loop, so that it can be taken into account in the future development and in the future releases. And when aligning this, I think it's even more importantly a way of working and cultural alignment, at least based on our experience. You really need to come to the common discussion and share the terminology, even that has been often a big challenge, that there are different terms in different parts of the organization when talking about the same things. But then, of course, just changing the culture and way of working is not possible if tooling doesn't support it. So the tool also needs to, or tools in this value chain need to be integrated seamlessly, and avoid any kind of copy pasting, avoid a person in a specific role having to use various different tools and kind of collect the data from there, but rather that the tooling is optimized per role in this value chain. So that's the kind of background on how do we approach this alignment from different dimensions.
Okay, thanks, Juha. So next we'll continue with the kind of what's the practical approach in making the alignment happen. Like Juha mentioned, there are basically 3 dimensions to be taken into account. So here they're named people, processes, and tools. And what comes to people, it's important to clarify the roles and responsibilities so everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and then teams have a common understanding about the roles. And also in this space, simplifying the practices and the ways of working, how the day-to-day work happens, and so forth. And also there needs to be a supporting documentation so that the teams have something to turn to. So it can be a handbook, there can be a training material or other supporting documentation. What comes to processes, it's important to kind of define what processes would be in the scope of the alignment. Often change management is an obvious choice, but also kind of it has turned out that the problem management, incident and service request management can be good candidates for including in the alignment exercise. And with the processes, the intention or target is to kind of improve the end-to-end workflow and then usability, so everything flows smoothly from start to finish, from develop to operations, and that the whole engine is optimized. And then there is a tools dimension. So typically there is a DevOps tool like Jira, for example. There is an ITSM tool, and then there is an integration solution of some kind in between. And it's important that there is a efficient flow of information, and then the tools are in sync. There is a way of flexibly using these tools, and there is a certain transparency and good availability of data between the tools. And the actual way of making the alignment happen, so this picture is showing kind of the phases and steps, how we've been doing it. So it all starts from setting the targets and the scope, as we saw on the previous slide. Also, of course, the resources need to be assigned to make them available for the work. But then the actual phases and the steps here. So there are first 3 steps that you execute once, and then there are 3 other steps or phases that are done in an iterative manner. And then we'll show in a bit more detail in the coming slides what happens in those phases. And when the alignment has been done, then the whole thing can be kind of deployed, so that rest of the teams trained and they can take into practice these new ways of working. So the first step is the current state review. So that's all about analyzing the starting point. Where are we at the moment? And the way to do it is to interview stakeholders from different roles and positions, typically 30 to 60-minute discussion, in order to really understand that from that person's point of view, what are the key challenges they've been facing, what works, what doesn't work, what are the improvement needs they have identified, and so forth. and collect the input from those different roles, and focusing on ways of working, processes, tooling, and then taking those dimensions into account. And then the findings or the input from those stakeholders can be documented. And typically we do it in a way that there is an overview of generic findings, and then there is just process-specific findings and input from the stakeholders. And that can be, that the findings can be pinpointed to an operating model, like the example here in this slide, to kind of show that which part of the operating model the finding belongs to, and it provides a kind of a visual way of presenting the findings as such. And then the second or the next phase is a point analysis, and that's about taking the input from the current state analysis and chewing that, trying to understand that, okay, we see these symptoms, but what's causing them? What's the root cause behind it? What are the things that are mentioned several times? Are there some common factors that can be found? And then trying to go a bit beneath the surface and understanding that what are the gaps that needs to be filled in order to make the whole engine work in a really optimized way. And in a similar way, this can also be done on a kind of here is a very example of a very high level summary. And then the same thing can be done in a more detail per each process, kind of showing and listing what are the kind of gaps that needs to be fixed. And here we have two parts, so tools and ways of working. And Juha, maybe you could briefly comment on the kind of findings on the tool part, and then what are the things that we typically see there?
Yeah, typically it's either a lack of integrations or then error-prone integrations. And now I don't mean that the integrations would not technically work. It's more about if the ways of working are different, it's pretty much impossible to build an integration that would work and kind of integrate these two practices. So we have to first define kind of the common service data model and reference data, and also align the different processes so that they work together, and then only integrations can work. One challenge that we have seen is that if different teams have different ways of working, even if they use same tools, then integrations usually are challenging. Also, what has been often missing from integrations is the feedback loop, that yes, new development is pushed to production, and that's maybe going through the change management as well. However, the feedback loop of knowing if there are problems, if there are bugs in that, and getting the kind of visibility to the real life experience with the new release, that's often missing, and that's really important as well from integration point of view. And then it's really about aligning and clarifying the role of different tools. It's not the point that you are able to do everything from 2 or more tools, but they have clear strengths, and we need to play with those strengths and also design the usage of different tools from role perspective. So that's often something that requires clarification also in our communication.
Okay, very good. And then if we think about the way you're working side, so here are some examples of pain point analysis findings. So there could be a case where the development teams don't really know why SIAM is doing certain things. So the mutual understanding is not on a very high level. There could be a shadow processes in use. And in general, the level of standardization is not very high. Also, the kind of understanding what are the end-to-end roles and how the end-to-end engine really should work may not be very well known. There could be a lack of documentation or instructions to support the daily work. And then also there could be, as mentioned already in Teemu's and Henri's comments that the amount of manual work can be high or unnecessary things need to be done in a manual way. So that actually brings us to the third phase in the approach, which is the target architecture. And I'll again hand over back to Juha.
Yeah, before we did any tool development, we wanted to clarify the target architecture, and the key principles here are that this forms a closed loop where data seamlessly flows between the tools, and in the center there's the common service data model. What it means here is that whether you are working in the development tools or in the service management tool, you have the same kind of reference data, same definition of what is it that we are developing, operating, and providing it as a service. Whether that's the systems or the teams, it's kind of master data for the whole value chain. And now everything then goes and refers to that same common service data model. And it starts from DevOps backlog, where team is working on stories, developing something new. They have the CI/CD pipeline, and they're working on the next release that then becomes ready and goes through the testing and is validated. But after that, they want to then deploy. And for that, there's a seamless integration between release management and change management. So with a click of a button in the development tool, the team can generate the change record, and it goes through then kind of automated checks and validates if it's okay to deploy. And everything becomes auditable. So there's a record that this is why the change was approved. Or if it was not approved, then obviously it requires manual handling in the change advisory boards. But in the optimal case, everything is okay, and we can just record that this change was done. It was auto-approved due to these documents and data being in place. And we are able to then also publish that to the change calendar and communicate to everyone that this is what was done now. But if there would be then incidents reported to service desk, for example, right after the deployment, then we would be able to trace that, hey, to this exact system, there was right now a change and now it's causing incidents. There's probably linkage between the two. And we can also then analyze that root cause, identify maybe a bug, and that will lead back to the DevOps team's backlog, where they can then start fixing that and have the full transparency and traceability between this. It's important to be able to measure this end to end, but also to be able to trace back that what caused this kind of issues and of course learn from that all the time. So it's a closed loop workflow and data flowing seamlessly, even if there are different tools involved. And each team and each role can contribute to this value chain from their preferred tooling and without any kind of copy pasting in between. That's the target architecture.
All right, thanks, Juha. So then we can move on to the next phase, which is kind of we have the last three phases that can be done in an iterative way. And first of them is the process design. And this is actually something that often takes quite a lot of time if done properly. So there is a need to have participants from the development teams and the service management teams to really go through kind of what the process is all about, how it works at the moment, what were the findings from the current state review and the pain point analysis, taking into account the target architecture, and then going through step by step how it should work, kind of design the new version of the kind of a process that optimizes the end-to-end flow here, and also kind of seeing that how it looks from the DevOps tool point of view, how it looks in the ITSM tool, and then making it fit together. And then here's an example of a change management process. Some other processes can be a bit more complicated to present, and there are more elements there. But anyway, this is the way you're presenting it and making the design that can be used going forward. And so the idea is that in applying the agile kind of a methodology, this can be done in a way that you do the design, then you do the build and configuration, kind of in the tool environment, and then you have the pilot teams to try them out, get the feedback, and then iterate and improve it until you get to kind of a level that is meeting the original targets and then the criteria for this certain process. And also the training, that's really crucial part of the whole exercise that can be piloted in this phase. So when the pilot teams are participating, also the training can be tried out, see how it works, what's the kind of comments and then feedback from the pilot teams, and then so forth. But this is the idea in general, to come up with the aligned processes and then the configurations in the tool environment. And when this has been done, then the kind of the last activity in the alignment is to kind of go out and then deploy it with the rest of the teams. So train them and then have them to start using the new ways of working. And of course, it doesn't stop there, like mentioned by Teemu and Henri as well. I mean, it's even though this is a major milestone to get things aligned and then teams starting to work in a new way. But of course, there needs to be some kind of a mechanism in place to continue to collect the feedback from the teams, understanding the changes in the environment, and then fine tune and further develop the alignment and how things are being done to make sure that it remains up to date and relevant going forward as well. So the benefits were already briefly discussed in the first part, but here is a collection of some, it's not a comprehensive list, but collection of some benefits that we have seen kind of when aligning DevOps and SIAM, and starting with the enhanced way of working. So it's typically, it's possible to improve and simplify the ways of working. So how the day-to-day work happens, that the roles can be clarified and the responsibilities are clearer. Also the terminology quite often is not consistent in the starting phase. So people may be using the same terms, but they may carry a different meaning. So with this exercise, it's also possible to kind of have more consistent terminology being used within the organization. Also increasing the transparency and visibility in the daily work, knowing what's going on and people having easy access to data through different tools. Then the processes. So introduction of common practices and processes, and then seeing that it works from end to end, from start to finish, and the whole workflow is optimized, and then having the real-time data across the processes and within the processes easily available to people in different roles. And then we have again the tooling side. So Juha, maybe again if you comment on this.
Yeah, it's of course about using the tool that is optimal for you without even having to know that there's other tools included to the value chain. So you seamlessly just get the transparency without manual copy pasting, and you know in which role to use which tool. I think that's kind of the summary of the benefits. So it's seamless and flexible.
Okay, and when we've been collecting the input and feedback from the users, we have seen the same things being mentioned there. So here's a collection of some feedback. So people are saying that managing changes is a lot simpler. They feel that they're getting rid of unnecessary bureaucracy, authorization or approvals. It's clear how that's being done. There is a better transparency, less manual work, as mentioned already. Kind of also some people have said that because things are made easier, it's also bringing the threshold of opening a ticket and managing things through tickets easier, lower, because they feel it's easier to do it, and so forth. So it really proves and shows that the kind of the real life experience from the users is showing, and then they feel that they are really getting the benefits in their day-to-day work.
What I'm really happy about also has been that the problem management has been really taken into use as part of this. So incidents are getting resolved for good, and that has been enabled by the seamless integration of DevOps and service management.
So then we have the last slide of this section, and it's about implementation. So this is the model that we've been developing and applying when aligning DevOps and SIAM. And in our view, it can be applied to organizations and environments of different types. So there are various factors here in the play. So the organization size can be different. It can be amount of teams can vary, and also kind of how the roles and responsibilities have been defined may change across the organizations. In terms of processes, the level of maturity, both on the development side and the SIAM side, may vary. Also, how many processes are used, and what's the level of standardization and harmonization in general. And in the tooling side, which tools are being used, whether there is a one or more development tools in use, and so forth. So these come into play. But in our view, the same approach and the same model can be applied in different environments. And the duration of the implementation, of course, is impacted by these factors, but typically we see that it takes about 3 to 6 months, assuming that you have the kind of a best practices available and can just apply them when doing the alignment. So this is in a nutshell kind of how in our view the alignment can be done in practice. And we still have a few minutes left, and I'm handing over back to Pavel to kind of close the workshop. So Pavel, if you continue from here.
Thank you, Timo, and thank you, Juha, for sharing your experience on that very interesting topic. And I can see here it very sophisticated, the structured approach that is needed, but you can still do everything in an agile way. And just to summarize the discussion regarding the OP case between Henri Helakari and Teemu Tanskanen and Timo's and Juha's presentation, I see here four steps how you can align the agile development and SIAM together. First, you have to understand the history, the current state, and also major pain points you have to address first. Then you need to prepare the team, define the processes that should be aligned together, and also define the tuning architecture. Then I understand from Timo's and Juha's presentation that you should gradually modify the processes and tools and manage the change, and that is the way that alignment was done also in OP. And of course, the next step is to enjoy the benefits and to continue in improving the alignment and also bringing new elements to the table. But of course, I propose and I recommend also to utilize best practices in order to make the project shorten and also doing it in a more efficient way. So there are best practices around that topic, and of course, every organization can use them for their own benefit. And in the end, maybe maybe just to summarize one more time, definitely aligning the development and SIAM is not an impossible thing. It's very much possible, and we have concrete examples of the journey regarding that. And we can now close the webinar, and thank you very much for the questions in chat. We will pick them and answer afterwards. And from my behalf and from behalf of Timo and Juha, I wish you a very pleasant week. And if you have any further questions or ideas or thoughts, you can anytime contact the team. You can see here in the webinar, so me, Timo Ahonen, and Juha Kujala. If you have any questions, ideas, or thoughts regarding the subjects, just please drop us an email or call us. Let's have a good discussion. Thank you very much and have a pleasant week.
Thanks. Bye.